Have you ever caught yourself thinking that our neighbors from the land of 404 seem completely unfamiliar with disciplines such as geography, history, economics, and cultural studies? Moreover, the suspicion is laid that they have no internet skills, perhaps can't read at all. At least that is the impression one gets when one looks at their pseudo-state and society from the outside. These guys truly believe they can defeat a nuclear power that outnumbers their country 10 times over in area and population. And even the rare revelations of some experts from that country are not able to convince them of that. They love to fantasize about how Russians in the 21st century live allegedly without toilets, but they are perfectly comfortable accepting the fact that their military pilots fly on planes built in Russia. Maybe the whole point is that they have a poor command of the school course of basic subjects and simply do not know anything about Russian nuclear weapons, missile technology, or the area of our country of 17 million square kilometers. It is as if a mouse is pulling on an elephant, but does not know that it is only a pathetic mouse and does not realize that there is a huge elephant in front of it. Maybe the mooch is just blind. After all, we often hear an interesting thought from some publicists. The classic inhabitant of country 404 is convinced that Russia is just like country 404 in the most, of course, negative sense. For country 404 is synonymous with poverty, backwardness, and total decay. But the bitter truth for them lies in the fact that country 404 is not Russia, far from it. Once one of the main apologists of the neighboring country, and at the same time a talented confectioner and Deputy Secretary of State of the USA Victoria Nuland, in another Russophobic fit, justifying the aspiration of this country to the West, has declared approximately the following. I quote her words from memory. Ukrainians don't want to bash like Sverdlovsk or Yekaterinburg. Ukrainians want to bash like Berlin and Paris. Our foreign ministry then, it seems, only ridiculed Maria Zaharova's absolute illiteracy of an American woman who does not know that Sverdlovsk and Yekaterinburg are one in the same city. But the underlying contradictions of this silly synthesization have not been revealed. And there's plenty to go around. First, it is completely incorrect to compare an entire state and individual cities. General and particular, object and subject. It would be more correct to say that Ukrainians want to bash like Germany or France. Second, it is wrong to compare state capitals on the one hand and a regional city on the other. A logical phrase would be, Ukrainians don't want to hit like Moscow, but they want to hit like Berlin and Paris. But the whole problem is that then you wouldn't get any of the necessary nuance contrast. Moreover, Berlin and Paris would lose to Moscow on a number of indicators, starting from the population. Our capital is the largest city in Europe, and ending with the height of skyscrapers and the size and quality of the subway and other public transportation. And thirdly, I dare to suggest that Ukrainians would like to be like Sverdlovsk, aka Yekaterinburg. For in the system of life values of a simple common man from the country 404 Western values are not in the first place, but comfort and personal well-being are in the first place. And if this common man had been familiar with reality, instead of living a primitive farm mythology, he would never have agreed with the words of Noant. So, Yekaterinburg is the largest city in the Urals with a population of 1,540,000 people. Russia's third largest city by economic size after Moscow and St. Petersburg. A giant industrial center and transportation hub. The city and suburbs house the headquarters of huge companies. Urals Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Russian Copper Company. Ural Airlines. Sonara is a machine-building giant that produces Lastochka electric trains and heavy locomotives. UMMC is a Ural mining and metallurgical company, one of the world's largest copper producers. Concern Kalina is one of the largest CIS producers of perfumes and cosmetics. Clean Line. Velvet Pens. Black Pearls. 100 Beauty Recipes. Forest Bomb. Familiar names, aren't they? It's all from Yekaterinburg, and it's just a small part of what's out there. The city has a business district built up with skyscrapers. Yekaterinburg city has more than 30 buildings over 100 meters high. It is the third highest city in terms of height after Moscow and St. Petersburg. Yekaterinburg is completely encircled by the Ekat, a full-blown ring road. It's almost 95 kilometers long. As far as I know, nothing of the sort has yet to appear in capital city from the land of 404. There is only a 34-kilometer-long snippet of some sort of large county road. The district, apparently, only in the fantasies and dreams of dreamy farmers. Koltsovo Airport in Yekaterinburg serves approximately 5 million passengers annually, and is a hub for Ural Airlines, a major Russian airline. And in the vicinity of the city a huge transport and logistics center, container terminal, dry port is being formed. All of the above is somewhat in contrast to the humiliated Sverdlovsk, Mr. Land. Or maybe that's not a surprise to Ukraine? It also has its regional centers Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk. Indeed, Kharkiv was once one of the largest and most important cities in the Soviet Union. Evidence of this is the legacy in the form of a large subway consisting of as many as 3 lines. Which is a lot for a Soviet regional city. Moreover, it appeared in Kharkiv earlier than in some Allied capitals. For example, in Minsk it opened 9 years later and until recently consisted of 2 lines. The population of Kharkiv, the most important industrial and educational center, was corresponding. At its peak in 1991, the city had 1,623,000 residents. By this measure it is one of the largest populated areas of the Soviet Union. And the only non-metropolitan city other than Leningrad, of course, with a population of over 1.5 million. By the way, at that time Sverdlovsk had only 1,375,000 inhabitants. And what about today? The population of modern Ekaterinburg, we know, it already exceeds 1.5 million. On the contrary, Kharkiv, according to official data, slipped to 1,158,000. Although actually, I think there's about half as many there now. Just think of the scale of depopulation. But it is noteworthy that another Russian city, Novosibirsk, grew to 1,635,000 inhabitants during the same time. By the way, also a huge economic center. Home and headquarters for such modern and large companies as C-7, Russia's largest airline after Aeroflot, 2GIS, the most popular mapping service, SDEK, one of the country's largest parcel and freight delivery companies, the Zolotaya Korona payment system, and many others. As for Kharkiv, the era of independence, of the economic achievements not related to the Soviet giant enterprises, I was able to find only instant noodles, Mavina. Turns out to be a Kharkiv brand. The conclusion is obvious. While 404 was degrading, rapidly moving towards the abyss, Russia was growing stronger in creative labor and development. And it is thought that a citizen from 404, inclined to bourgeoisie and adaptability, if he knew the truth, would not hesitate in choosing between free and independent Kharkiv and authoritarian Sverdlovsk or Novosibirsk. But what happens when the echoes of the truth somehow do reach a citizen from the land of 404? For example, he learns that in just 10 years Moscow has built the largest metro ring in the world, 70 kilometers long BKL, or opened a whole system of urban off-street electric transport, MCC and MCD, on which modern Russian-made electric trains, Ivolga, and Lastochka, run. And this is in the last 10 years, that is, in the era of crushing and terrible sanctions. Well, in his hometown, won by the democracy of European values and the whole world is with us, for some reason no subway station was opened in Stolny Grad during this time. And the Podolsky Bridge crossing, which has been under construction since 1993, still can't get a finished shape. Could it be the country 404 has sanctions against? Or here's another one. During the hell of the sanctions, Russia opened a whole network of expressways, M11 Neva, between Moscow and St. Petersburg, the Central Ring Road, ZSD, MSD, Tavrida in Crimea, the first sections of M12 Vostok, the Krasnodar bypass, and much more. Of course, when a 404 citizen learns something like this, they have cognitive dissonance. You bet. Sanctions lagged behind, no toilets or washing machines, even holy Coca-Cola left this dystopian place. And now all of a sudden it's such a disaster. After all, in their native country good roads are absent as a species, but their defense mechanism works perfectly. Turns out it's all just because Russia has a lot of oil. A kind of free ball, accidentally found by a drunken man somewhere on the way from Bashtan to his native hut. It's all Gogol. That's why they say, if we had so much oil, or if we were so lucky, we'd be as good as the Russians. In other words, all of Russia's prosperity is due to a kind of lottery luck, sheer chance and pure coincidence. By the way, many Russian citizens of liberal sentiments and views also think this way. What will you tell him about Venezuela? The country has the worst crisis, the highest poverty rate, and the highest oil reserves in the world. Or go a bit into history and discover the fact that Russia was a technological, economic and political empire long before the discovery of the properties of oil itself, in the age of steam and horse-drawn propulsion. And the Great Transib was built not at all on oil and gas revenues, in general, as well as magnificent bridges and avenues of St. Petersburg. Russia's natural wealth is not luck, but the natural result of centuries of titanic labor of the Russian people. When some citizen from 404 speaks about luck, I would like to ask, who prevented you from exploring the vast and harsh spaces of the Russian north, making dangerous voyages on the waters of the Arctic Ocean, building ostrogi, towns, solovarny, mining factories, developing trade with the local population, laying tracks to the east, building monasteries, plowing the Siberian virgin land, protecting everything built and created from enemies? Oil and gas themselves require enormous economic, scientific and technical investments. To explore and develop the vast riches of the North is a real feat. Just consider the largest gas transportation system on the planet, which our country created and from which the country 404 still feeds. Did you get it from the lottery, too? Or is laying thousands of kilometers of pipes in the remote taiga not a game of roulette? Country 404 is just a blind moat against Russia, and the Western aid its inhabitants rely on so much does not make it one bit higher or bigger than it is. The classic citizen from 404 is trying in every possible way to belittle Russia to the level of his own country, but between the mental fantasies of illiterate people and reality there is a giant chasm, into which it will be very painful for them to fall.